Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited today because Scott Gaeta from Renegade Games is here. Say hello, Scott.
Hello, how you doing?
Good, and you're founder slash CEO, I suspect. You have a specific title there, but the guy who
That's
runs
all.
the show.
Yeah,
And I'm really excited to have you on because when I think of Renegade Games over the last 5 years, and I could be mistaken, but it seems to me you guys are probably the best sort of small, growing into major publisher, like up into the top atmosphere of publishers of anyone I've seen. And I always like to sort of have a focus of the conversation in these interviews. And for this one, I'd really like to talk to you about scaling and growth and how you've done it to the extent you're willing to share.
sure.
But to start, I also like to sort of talk a little bit about how people got into the industry and what they were doing. So, I know you went from Cryptozoic and then started Renegade, but how did you sort of enter into board games? And if you could condense that maybe into 5 minutes, what's the how did you what's your origin story?
So my origin story was I started in the industry professionally in CCGs, so in collectible card games, and I actually was a retailer in the 90s, and I opened a store, and I started contracting for Decipher Games. And my first gig with them was writing marketing plans, and I actually revamped their organized play department and wrote up a bunch of new strategies and everything, how organized play was going to be run. And then eventually I went and worked for them full time. I sold my store and I relocated to Virginia Beach and worked for them and wound up eventually like running that game group. And then I was actually being recruited by two different companies, a Seattle company. I know, it was really nice. So I had to decide between Seattle or San Diego, and I chose San Diego. Mainly, I chose the place more than the company. So I wound up in San Diego, and I worked for Upper Deck for about 4 years. And we did a lot of awesome stuff there. That company had a lot of phenomenal people. And then Cryptozoic started with me and 3 other partners. That kind of came about because World of Warcraft was leaving Upper Deck, and we wanted to continue World of Warcraft trading card game. So Blizzard helped us actually start that company.
Wow.
So Blizzard financed us. They didn't have an ownership stake, but they financed Cryptozoic, and they gave us a loan.
And presumably because they were really happy with you guys and loved your passion and that kind of thing, or
Yeah, they really believed in the product, and we were, basically all our initial hires at Cryptozoic were the World of Warcraft trading card team that all had gotten laid off from Upper Deck, right? Like, their product went away, they were all going to lose their jobs, which was horrible. So we were able to basically just hire that whole team and bring them in-house and continue that. And I think that was really important to Blizzard, was there was, hundreds of thousands of people that had played that game, even the trading card game. The numbers were phenomenal, and they didn't want it to totally go away. So that we were the solution where we could keep that going and keep the continuity. So I was with my partners for almost 5 years, and then 2014 I decided I wanted to do something different, and I didn't want to commute to Irvine anymore from San Diego, which was a bit of a pain. So then I started Renegade. So Renegade's actually just been 3 years.
right? And that's the start of the story. Like, you started Renegade when I started Pencil First Game. Like, it's recently, right? And so clearly in that story, what you had to start at least is years and years and years of experience in retail and
Sure.
tabletop and cards and brands, and so that's a lot to bring to the table. But I'm sure there are other people that have a lot of experience that don't do as well as you have. So so coming in at Renegade, right? You did, if I recall, have some title or a title that was sort of a pullover from Cryptozoic. You had a little bit of a base when you started Renegade, right?
Yeah, so it was really just Gravwell. So Gravwell came with me because I had signed that at Cryptozoic, and that was our first non movie television IP game. So it was an unlicensed game. It was an original game. That came with me, and then John Kovalich's stuff came with me too. So he had a party game called Raffle, and then he had another party game called Double Feature, which hadn't been released by Cryptozoic yet. So that came with me, and we put a double feature out. So yeah, that was kind of it.
And then, so jumping in at that moment when you started, like, what was your sort of? Because I'm going to ask if it changed in a second. But when you came in, what was your business plan? What was your plan of attack then in terms of how you were going to grow and build Renegade?
So my plan initially was, first of all, I didn't want to do licensed games. I wanted to take a break from that.
Sure.
Right, I'd been doing it forever. And it's really fun to play in other people's sandboxes and get to work with all those big licenses, but it's also a different experience. So I really wanted to spend more time working with individual designers and kind of making original games that weren't kind of restricted by other people's rules. So that was a big part of the plan. And then the other thing was I wanted to make lighter games that were accessible.
Right.
Sort
of like gateway entry playable.
Yeah, right, like gateway. It's like, I've had this conversation with a lot of other people. Like, they're not gateway games; they're just games.
Right.
They're just games.
Games that are quick to play and have fun with. Right. Like.
Right, and to a new gamer coming in, it's an eye-opening type of experience, right? That it's, there's not just Monopoly and Risk.
Oh, sure.
And the games I call punishments that are children's games that parents have to play with their kids.
Sure.
And it's a punishing experience as a parent to play Chutes and Ladders, right? Like
sure.
Candyland. We just want to kill ourselves.
Have you played Mole Rats in Space yet?
Which one?
Mole Rats in Space, I think is the name of it.
Oh.
It's Matt Leacock with what's the name of that company? Not Blue Orange, the other one. Peaceable Kingdoms. It's his kids' game.
Okay.
But like it's cooperative Chutes and Ladders with like some cool.
Okay.
It's not Chutes, but it's like, oh, that's a different way of doing it, and you're like bouncing around. But
right.
Okay, so
Awesome.
So you're going to go in for gateway stuff, and you have a few titles to go, and so and those, I don't, correct me, but did you do Kickstarter on those titles, or those just went straight to retail? Right, you had the channel.
They just went straight to retail. So yeah, we haven't done. Renegade hasn't actually done a Kickstarter. We've worked with other creators that used Kickstarter.
And actually, we talked for a while about the Siblings Trouble back a few years ago.
Yeah, but, sure.
And that's actually an interesting step that you've taken, and you see it more all over the place. But I sort of felt like you guys were one of the first people to take it as seriously, and it was like you were partnering with people. And I'm thinking about Randy Hoyt in particular, but where. Sort of looking at Kickstarter games that fit your portfolio or whatever, and doing deals where you basically picked up publishing. So, like the first game, was it Lanterns, or had you done that with something else first, or how did that start? How did you decide to do that?
So Lanterns was definitely first. That was only a few months after Renegade became public. So that was August 2014. Was the first Gen Con I had gone to in years that I wasn't exhibiting, and I just did meetings with all my old distribution contacts and said, hey, I'm doing this new thing. And then Randy had run his Lanterns Kickstarter like that September or so, October, right? It ended in October. I remember seeing the Kickstarter video, and I really liked the game. And then I met him at BGG Con, and and kind of this, the story is, I said, so what's your plan? And I said, wait, don't answer that. My impression is that a lot of people put games on Kickstarter, and you and I probably had this conversation, right? Like, and afterwards, it's like, now what? And I said, you wind up with 500 copies of these in your garage, and it's like, what's the next step? Do you want to deal with all that, what really needs to happen afterwards, or do you want to make your next game? And he said, oh, no, I made Relic Expedition, and there's about 500 copies in my garage. So... So he's like, that's exactly what my I don't want my plan to be. So we decided to partner on it, and Randy's an awesome producer.
Great.
Right, like he's, to me, a producer, like that's really kind of my skill set as well. A producer is kind of like the conductor of an orchestra.
Sure.
They don't know, they're not an expert at playing every instrument, but they know how to kind of bring the whole thing together and get the thing done.
A generalist that's really good at working with specialists, right?
Right, exactly. So,
and we've done a Q&A with him. I have on the channel, and spoke a little bit to him about his side of that story.
Right.
And I mean, it must have gone well, because I make fun of him a little and poke him at it, but basically he's become your farm team. Like he goes, he funds.
I would call him a farm team.
No, he's okay. But in the sense of
Yeah.
he is. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. He's not an employee of yours. I mean, he's
No.
independent. He goes out and makes these games and make these projects. He does the Kickstarter, and then I presumably you talk about each one whether or not you want to pick it up, but some large percentage of them you then become the publishing arm of. And even with Fox in the Forest, that I don't even think that went to Kickstarter, right? That was pure.
Right. Yeah. Fox in the Forest didn't go to Kickstarter, and neither is Sunday Split, which comes out this November.
And I've never played it, but man, a bunch of people have said some good things about that game. Like
Sunday Split or Fox? Yeah.
No,
Sunday Split's good. Fox in the Forest, like I'm not a trick-taking fan, but this is a cool way to do a trick-taking game.
I haven't played it, but it's super pretty. It's the kind of art I like. But
so those two know, but yeah, we're just publishing partners on them. So it's worked out great. I mean, we kind of I view him as I could just have like another me over there, like producing and finding something awesome to make, and it's not his full-time job. So he usually does about one game a year. This year was the exception with two smaller games because they don't take as much bandwidth. But he's got something really big that is going to be the next step, and that one he's going to run through Kickstarter because we worked on the P&L and everything on that together, and there was a struggle. It's a lot of art in that game.
Is this Spy Club or a different one?
Yeah, Spy Club.
Yeah, he's been sharing that online recently, and it's gorgeous. I mean, it's super amazing. But I mean, to talk about that scaling question and how you've really, because when you're building your business, I mean, there's all sorts of parts. I presume there's the product side and the marketing side and the outreach side. But I look at the wall of your games behind you, and I mean, what has Randy done? Like a quarter of them? I mean, it's a decent.
No, not that much. We're putting out 19 games this year. So
never mind. When did you get to 19 games a year? So how many games did you do last year?
Last year it was about a dozen.
Oh, it's not that big of a growth.
It was 11. Yeah.
Oh, it's a double.
Yeah, I'm actually probably wrong on the 19. We're over 20 at this point because this was totally not part of our plan for the year, but when we just started working with Shem Phillips on Raiders of the North Sea.
Oh, sure, okay.
So we decided to be his partner in North America, and that line is massive, right? There's not just Raiders of the North Sea. There's the other two games in the trilogy, and then there's all the expansions. So we're putting all those out too. So that blew our schedule out.
And let's go back to the narrative a little bit. So you're sort of coming in and you said, okay, I want to do these family weight, easy in type of games. And then there's this Lanterns opportunity, absolutely fits that target product space, and it's a great game. And then you maybe have 2, 3, 4. How did you take us through how you start growing your portfolio and business? I mean, because you really scaled professionally, if you will.
Sure. So we kind of called that strategy was kind of phase one. It was to focus on entry level games, gateway games, things that are accessible, lower price point. And that has been our focus the first 3 years, and now we're starting to dabble in heavier games. Like you've seen a few midweight games from us, but Kepler 3042 is probably the biggest heavy game that we're doing. It's like a minute to
And where do you put Clank? Like entry to mid, or do you put that in
Clank?
Mid?
Yeah, it's probably entry to mid. Clank in Space is probably a solid midweight game. It's just a little bit heavier, than the base Clank game. But still, those are all very accessible weights.
Is Clank your biggest title? What is your top couple games?
So Clank just surpassed Lanterns by a pretty good margin this year. Lanterns is definitely in the top 3 or 4. I'll tell you, Scott Pilgrim is going to be huge for us. Right now, our print run on Scott Pilgrim was a year's worth of Lanterns. So that's a license, right? That was our first.
And so here's the shit for the first 3 years. You've got your original titles. You're developing some more. You have this sort of target experience, but they're all sort of things that you're building through your funnel. And now, it seems like there's 2 new things, or maybe there's 3. One is brands. You're going back, and you said like we stepped away from brands. Scott Pilgrim's obviously a brand, and then also you're with the games you were describing, North Sea.
Oh yeah, Raiders of the North Sea, the whole North Sea saga.
That's sort of not quite a Passport Games, but that's like a line. That's like it's a different type of brand. It's a product. I don't know, acquisition, or you're bringing you're slotting in a thing.
Right. Well, it's basically a license to us, right? Is the English publisher, and that hasn't been a big part of our model. We've done a little bit of that, but we don't want to do too much of it. Like Honshu was that as well, right? Like we worked with Luda Pellet and did Honshu. So
and so I guess sort of how did you think through that when you were like, okay, now it's time to start bringing in these, like, how much is this a plan versus particular product opportunities?
There's definitely a plan. Like I said, there's kind of like the phases that we're growing through, but there's certainly the flip side of that where it's a product opportunity. So I had been introduced to Shem last year at Essen by our mutual partner. We work with Schwerkraft, Karsten over there on Clank right now, and he had introduced us, and I really liked Raiders of the North Sea. And I had talked to him about it, and at the time he was like, "No, I think I'm good the way I am. I'm just going to kind of keep doing Kickstarters and sales off my website." And but his games really weren't in distribution here in North America. They weren't readily available.
Sure.
So, and he was like, "That's fine." And I'm like, "Okay, fair enough." And then he got the nomination for, he got a Kennerspiel nomination, and then he was like, "All right, now maybe it's time to take the next step. Like now I'm just leaving money on the table if my games aren't available. Like I get some nomination, but nobody can find my games, in every game store." So that kind of evolved, and that was more opportunistic. Like we weren't planning on it. We'd had a conversation, but that also kind of fits. Like it also kind of fit our plan. Like his games are not super light; they're nice mid-weight games, and they're great games, right? They're high quality. So if it could have been a game that got a nomination that I really didn't like, and I probably wouldn't have wanted to do it. So
right.
And
so that's sort of how your product funnel's been growing, right? But the other thing, is, and you just released, you don't see companies posting board game jobs all that often, and you just opened a handful of positions. But before that, you brought Sarah on board. Right. So how have you, when it started as you, how did you think of scaling your employees, and what was important when you were scaling your employees?
So some of it is necessity and some of it is selfishness. So
what don't I want to do?
Right, exactly. I've kind of been lucky throughout my career. I started off doing things like marketing and sales, and then I moved more into a producer brand type role. But I've had a lot of exposure to business sides. I've, had P&L responsibility and managed, tens of millions of dollars in marketing budgets, even outside, at Upper Deck, even outside of games. So I got to touch a lot of different stuff. So I can do it, but it doesn't mean I want to do it all, right? So I really love marketing, and I think marketing is kind of the secret sauce that can take a great game and actually let it realize its potential, right? But I can't do it all. So Sarah was definitely the first role on my list of, I want to focus on product, but I need somebody really awesome to do marketing and sales, because if marketing and sales isn't awesome, we can have the best product in the world, nobody will know.
Sure.
So Sarah was definitely the first role. And then the other role that people probably don't know about is we have Anita Osborne is our creative director. Okay. So Anita, she was somebody that worked at Upper Deck when I was there, though we didn't work together a lot. I worked with she was a team lead that ran a whole group of graphic designers, but my contact for my products was somebody else. So she was there, but we never really worked together in a big way. But then she left and she went to Spin Master and some other companies. And we connected about 2 years ago, and she started doing graphic design work for us. But she's really phenomenal. So now she manages about half a dozen outside graphic designers and production people. And she's also an illustrator, so she can do, like, when we're talking about product stuff or concept, she can put together some quick sketches for us. And
And
so she's really kind of heading that up, and nobody really even knows she's there.
And does she get like a handful of products, or does she ultimately oversee all of them from a creative perspective, and then maybe touch some more than others?
It's exactly that. So she oversees everything. She's in charge of our brand look. She's always constantly. I'm like, let's do a different logo for that box. She's like, no, you have to stay on brand and keep the standard logo. I'm like, no, it's covert. Let's do a logo that's covert.
You're allowed to have fun sometimes. Come on.
Right? Yeah, like everybody's the enemy of fun that surrounds me. So, right? Exactly. It's like, lighten up. No, she's awesome. So she oversees everything, but then there are certain projects where she's doing everything or almost everything. She's a phenomenal logo designer. Though we have others that we work with as well that are incredible too. But so she's really, really good. She's kind of that other side of what I do, right? Like where I know that she's going to make sure to look and feel. She'll do some art direction. I'll do some art direction. We'll kind of split that stuff up.
And so so you have marketing, creative direction with contractors, and then I don't have it in front of me, but it was like a localization director, a sales in a region, and a producer. What are your next three?
Okay, so there's two more that we have that aren't even on. People don't know. So there's Robin, who is our controller. That's my wife. And
controller in all senses, I'm sure.
She's doing the one thing that I absolutely do not want to do. She takes care of financial stuff. I do all the product P&Ls and all that sort of stuff, but she's doing the day-to-day finances, and she's full-time, much to her chagrin. So she's...
it's not like some kicks. I mean, this is major. You're a real company with employees. I mean, it's a real job. It's a big job.
Yeah, it's a real job. She's busy. It started off at first where it was kind of very much part-time hours. That's all she needed. Now she's saying she needs help. So
start with an intern. Give her an intern to start.
Right, exactly. But we're all virtual for the most part. So, and then the fifth person is Jenny, who is part-time. And she does customer service.
Oh, okay.
So when somebody emails our customer service email and has a problem or a piece is missing from their game or whatever, she hooks them up. So that's been the last 18 months we've had pretty much that
crew. And now you've opened up these 3 new spots.
Right. So the first one was the European localization coordinator.
Right.
That's definitely one that I need. So as we've grown, we've had a lot of interest from outside partners in doing our games. And we don't use a licensing model so much. We actually produce almost all of our foreign editions of our games in our factory, and we just sell to our distribution partners.
Right.
And that's just taken up a ridiculous amount of my time. So I need somebody to take some of that stuff off my plate, because when I'm focusing on that, I'm not focused on making games.
Do what you're best at, right?
Right. Yeah, so that's the goal, and we want to hire somebody that's in Europe so that the majority of our partners are in Europe. We want to have somebody local to them in their time zone, that sort of thing.
And just for this, because this will probably post in about a week, but that position's still open. These are positions you're looking for. Okay.
We just posted it.
All right. Okay, so who's next?
What else was up there? Marketing coordinator.
That was the third one.
Yeah.
Marketing coordinator.
So marketing coordinator is basically somebody to help Sarah. So Sarah's been doing marketing and sales, and her time she's overloaded now, right? Like we've maxed her out. Like we often refer to ourselves as full-time plus.
Sure.
Right? It's that you work that job and a half amount of hours, and there's no more hours that we can find in the day. So we need somebody to come in and take some of that like kind of entry-level marketing stuff off her plate, so she can find more time to grow our sales and develop new channels and that sort of thing. So, and then the last position we put up there was a producer, and that's somebody. The only caveat for that one is I want somebody in San Diego that's near me, because somebody that I can work with on a daily basis.
And that, I mean, I don't know. I just, in the game industry, the video game industry, that kind of job, producer, associate producer, the whole production track is totally jobs everywhere. It's a whole part of it. I feel like in board games, I never see a game producer type job up. I mean, I just never see it.
Yeah. It's really weird. Like when I was back at Decipher, we were putting out these phenomenal trading card games. We were doing Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Star Trek and everything else, and we didn't have that role. And I had introduced that role into the company, and back then we were calling them brand managers,
Sure.
but it's essentially the same thing. And we were like, nobody owns this process, right? We have game designers, we have production people, and we have the graphic designers, and we have sales, and we have marketing, and nobody's kind of orchestrating that whole thing.
And it's a little different than a developer, right? Like, it's not just the managing, putting the game together. It's owning that, and then owning the relationship with marketing. And I don't know the exact job description, but like that's what I would think of it as.
No, that's you've totally nailed it. Like, and I've had some people, since it's listed as game producer, and some people have emailed me or contacted us, and they've misunderstood it. They think it's just the developer.
Right.
I mean, playtest games, develop the game, and it's like, no. That's a totally different role. Like, the producer is going to work with developers.
Yeah, it's the product. I mean, yeah, totally.
Right. And they might get in that, like, depending on their individual skill set, they might have a really heavy influence on the development of the gameplay, but it's really a much bigger scope.
Right. And I know from my perspective, oftentimes I'll tell people, like, I'm trying to do as least as possible myself, right? Like, my job in that kind of context is making sure that everyone has what they need, working with the best people to work with, the specialists are doing their thing, and everything's communications running smoothly, timelines running smoothly, just that whole set, right? Yeah. And I think it's different than that traditional board game developer who's sort of working on making the best product possible, but not necessarily handling budgets or marketing or any of those other pieces, right?
Right. Well, and even a developer, like when you say the best product possible, depends on the person.
Sure.
The best game possible might not be the best product possible, right? Like, I mean, it could be a great game, but if there's already 500 train games in the market, we really don't need another game about Mars right now. I think we're good. I think the Mars theme has done well.
What a weird theme to go after, too, right? Like, how big was the Mars market to begin with?
Right. I mean, but between terraforming Mars and now Ignacci's new game, like, I think we're going to be okay on Martian themes for a little while. But there might be a phenomenally themed Martian game sitting somewhere on somebody's table,
right?
And we should probably either hold that off for a while, or we should come up with a new theme for it and change how that game's packaged, because it's just going to get lost.
Right. So we talked about sort of the game funnel a little bit. We talked about your team and sort of where you see Renegade go. How, where's Renegade in 3 years? Like, when do you go to this from this? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if we ever want to be like this. So I think it's really nice, the size that we have now. Like I've told other people, this is, again, kind of a selfish attitude, but we don't have a lot of time to, like, train a lot of entry-level people, right? Like, everybody works so hard and we're moving so quickly that we don't have that luxury of a massive, 50, 100-person company where you can bring in really experienced people and kind of mentor them and train them.
And you have a great network of pros, right? So it's not like you can't find the good people to help you.
Right. And I mean, But on the other side, I do kind of enjoy finding people that you can kind of mentor and train and kind of bring them along. But we just don't have that luxury right now. So we are kind of focused on let's find superstars, people that can kind of do the work and don't need a lot of oversight, and that just they're kind of a proven quantity. But in 3 years, I don't see the team being too much bigger than what we are now. We did actually, I forgot to mention, we did bring somebody else on. So Leisha Cummins is our new director of operations. She, again, manufacturing just got too big in scope for me to do everything. So now she's working on that. She's an ex-Upper Deck Cryptozoic.
Right.
So again, like a proven quantity.
But you're saying in 3 years, you're 10 people in 3 years total, that kind of size.
Yeah. All right. But, there's lots of other companies, like, so good friends with the guys over at WizKids. They're about that size.
Yeah. And a lot of people would be surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, I had Arno from Renegade Games. Turned out he's local, which is weird. I didn't expect it.
Yep.
So I started coming over for game nights, and he was talking about he works at Solar City, and they got acquired by Tesla, and he had a bad day, or what. Like, it was just some random thing. But I'm like, wait a minute. You have a full. This isn't part time for you.
Yeah.
Matagot has like 20, and there's other people involved. But it was just a reminder that even as things get bigger, and companies, just because you might know them better, they still might just be 2 people, 4 people, 3 people, part time. Right. I mean, it really is in many ways a hobbyist space still, and across the board.
Oh, for sure. And I think I had mentioned, like, I'm usually pretty cautious and conservative about bringing new people on. Like, the biggest mistake that I see people in the game industry make over the last 20 years is they get something, they get a hit, and they think that it's never going to end.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, overnight, they ramp up to this like massive scale, and they're like, "Oh, I've got plenty of cash, and this is just going to go forever." And then 6-8 months later, your game sales level off and slow down, and now you're operating at a scale that you can't support.
Yep.
So it's kind of that your eyes are bigger than your stomach sort of thing. And it's easy to get swept up in that.
And it's a hit-driven business. I mean, at the end, it's a creative business. So that's a great segue, actually, because we've hit the 30-minute mark. And after my debacle with Mike Pascal, where it couldn't stop, my machine wasn't good enough. I tried to keep, but on that sort of, for that publisher that is not just wanting to make their own games on Kickstarter and has sort of grown and is doing more titles, and maybe isn't going to fire up as far as Renegade is going, but it's sort of looking to scale and grow into like a business. They want to be full-time, whatever that ends up being. What would be your key piece of advice you'd give that person, or perspective to keep in mind, other than number one, don't overhire. That you got to figure
don't overhire. I mean, slow and steady growth is healthy. If you do get that big spike, take a breath, take a step back. It might not stay forever. And if it does, that's awesome. You're that much better off. But, maybe don't quit your job on day one. Give it a little bit of time if you have a day job. I mean, I'm hypocritical because this is the guy that quit his job to start to go into the game industry full time when his wife was pregnant. So, but
Michael Coe had a story like that where he had no money in the bank and his wife was pregnant. It's like, geez, man.
Right. Yeah, what are you going to do? I mean, sometimes you roll the dice.
It worked out.
Right, it worked out. But I don't know, like, as far as your next steps, just kind of take it one game at a time, see how it goes. If you're going to hire somebody or bring in help, find the one thing. First of all, I would say find the one thing that you're the worst at.
Right.
So don't make the selfish decision of, you might be the best finance guy, and that is critical to your company's success, but you hate it. You probably still need to do it. If you're awesome at it, you should probably still do it. Right. But if you're good at it, but you could bring in somebody better, and that would help your business grow, then that's the right move.
Right.
So try to be honest with yourself, and if you're going to bring in additional help, make sure that it's help that's going to help you get to that next step. If it's just a wash, and then it probably isn't worth doing. Right? Like, help it grow, and then it's a disservice to the people that you hire as well if their addition to the team isn't going to add value.
Sure.
Because then a year down the road, you're going to be going, why did I hire this person? I probably can't afford them anymore.
And then you got to figure out how to let them go, and it's all complicated.
Yes. Right. And, that nobody wants to be in that position. So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on and sharing all of the insight. Again, I mean, it has been quite impressive what you've accomplished with Renegade so far, and I expect it'll still keep on going. And everyone watching, thanks. Hopefully it was helpful to you, whatever part of the business you're in. And again, thanks for coming on, and talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Absolutely.